Gracious good evening. If you're joining me on Sunday evening, or happy Monday morning, we're getting ready for Decision 5. Typically, we don't do a recap for Decision 4 because Decision 5 is so much different uh, because we have some tricks in inventory we can use. By this time, you have actually really seen what has happened, what goes into the inputs. And this particular video, which I'll have in the announcements, the link for, is our Before Decision 5 video that Professor Paul and I did, our course lead, on why Decision 5 is so important. And there are cheats, secrets, winning strategies for the final decision because inventory is handled somewhat differently. But this is a must-watch, 39 minutes you can see on the bottom there, video. So it's very, very important that you watch this before Decision 5 because all bets are off. There's no annex at this time. We look at the previous annexes, but you're preparing for your final presentation, your final paper. So that's what Decision 5 is all about. This time, Decision 4, we had another change. Red team dropped to last and blue jumped up to second. So our universe has been amazing in that we've had changes of all three teams throughout the process. And yellow team maintained their lead, but if we look at the points, and you can see this in your own interfaces, we'll look at just briefly later to see some of our usual like curves, loss order, or inventory. But this is much more important. So we're going to listen to a little bit of this, just the secret part and a couple of tips from our previous video of how to handle Decision 5, not just thinking of where do we end up at the end of the sim, but also our final presentations. And most of our points in the grades of the class have got to do with explaining briefly with our PowerPoints or our videos, what did we do, what did we do right, what did we do wrong. The points are so close that almost everybody's in number one. I mean, it's just a razor's edge for all three. But we did have decisions made, especially by yellow this time. They stretched their lead, and there's a lot of texts I put on the text site, especially one very important one where one of the members said, I'm doing everything's doing better and better in my car line because I keep looking at EBIT every time I change the sliders and do it, whether it's supply or demand. And there's supply, demand is the left side of the X, supply is the right, and when they intersect economically is called equilibrium. That's our 0 point for lost orders over inventory. And trying to get in control of inventory and make that match, many teams never get there. And on this universe, we haven't had as much positive EBIT in family and in image because it's been a chase the curve with all of the teams in terms of trying to get the balance between inventory and what the customers want. And there's been a lot of overinvesting. I won't say who, I told one of the teams, we've been texting a lot, of course, thank you, that they had their sliders way, way, way too high. And they're like, well, how do you know that? Let's just go back to the white market line. You can see what the customers want on the white line, and then huge gaps of what they spent on that particular slider, like a 9, and the customers wanted a 5. And that's been now almost 5 decisions where that still has happened, where we're chasing the gap, especially in family and image. But a lot of teams, Yellow's got to the point where they're almost all positive EBIT, but not by a lot, because they have struggled in image. But still, this is a change now. We've got higher gas prices in image. Some of you are doing better in low cost because it's growing faster, and eco is also a disaster because it's really hard to make those sliders work because of capex. It's expensive to make those cars, even though you're getting better emissions numbers. It's heavily weighted towards, rosé and towards, we never get to positive retained earnings usually, but at least less negative return retained, and of course revenue and the all powerful LOI with our EBITs. So let's listen to Paul a little bit with these really, I mean, I know a lot of you are going to watch this video to its entirety because it's really important before Decision 5 to really end strong, but also to see what you did right and wrong. A lot of the comments he makes are just telling you what you have to put in that paper.
Aware of where the competitors are targeting, and even and can say, let's go after them there or let's avoid that.
That's interesting, and hopefully you get some feedback that will, allow us and, to understand like where the insight comes for the students that are taking the class. If they share that input with you, like, hey, it was when we figured this out,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so those are the kinds of things that we could build in or at least use earlier in the class to try to let, because it would be generic, it'd be for everybody in the class,
Yeah, well,
right?
that's what they seem to be doing in the AI papers. I mean, they are really comparing their annexes because the way you asked those questions is you said, I'm trying to think of how you did. It was really interesting. It was why did you change and what did you change and what made you change? And they're saying, okay, here's where, and it's really about vision and missions and values, but they actually got into the nitty gritty and said, this is we looked at competitively, and this is why we decided we had to change because this is where we were going to have to target that wasn't working where we were going with eco. So those papers, I think, will be really good. I hope that they keep up that, that idea because that's what they saw as the reason and the way they were doing the papers.
Yeah, well, and it's also part of the big picture of the class is that even if they made the changes on the fly because they made competitive changes because of pressure, but they still need to slow down and understand what are the values of your company? What have you promised to the stakeholders? What does your board of directors think is happening?
Right.
You don't have, just because you're the CEO doesn't mean you can do whatever you want to do. You still have to attempt to go back and square the circle. You've got to say, okay, the world is changing on us. How are we going to manage this? We have to react. Should we react? Is there a short-term price? Do we need to change our mission statement? Do we need to change our strategy? How do we do this? And so, with any luck, there's a lot of learning how all these things fit together. They're not just decisions you make annually and whatever happens, happens. They're decisions you make because you're running a certain kind of organization and your stockholders are expecting certain results and your stockholders that are into whatever you're into because you put it on your mission statement will expect you to operate that way too. And oh, by the way, if you don't do it, you're going to pay the price
Oh yeah.
because the people are going to come up and say, hey, but you said you were all about this. What are you doing that for? Right. And so
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm doing a lot for Decision 5 in the final paper here coming up is saying, let's see some cool data visualization, let's see some great graphics, and let's explain what you tried to do, what did work and what didn't work. Pat yourself on the back, but also say, I'm taking responsibility because I was really wrong here. And it's what's the evidence? Why were you really wrong? And if you want to take responsibility, don't just say, I don't know, we were too random. It's like, what did you miss or what did you see? And they're seeing that so much more now. I mean, they're they're seeing
yeah,
it. I mean, I've got data they don't see, and they're still showing me surprises. They're saying, "Hey, did you see this that Yellow did? Because you mentioned they were building inventory there, and you told all of us that, and we were worried about this price change, but they smoothed it out by balancing out and not making as much that next time." And I said, well, yeah, that was what Professor Paul told us is like back down on your manufacturing if you're just selling to lose money. And that, I
right.
mean, that's what they were basically doing. And now they're roast and we actually have, I think there's only one yellow that's got into accumulated ARE, retained earnings,
It's
where they're
hard.
actually getting positive. Well, this is a turnaround. I mean, this is, to me, this is
Yeah.
Sam's Club. I mean, this, and as I'm looking at these and the numbers and saying, in euros or whatever they are, it's like they're deep underwater
Yeah.
starting here,
Well, that's right. That's right. And that's why they have the chance to take over the company. It's a
Yeah,
turnaround.
yeah.
But I ask my students after every semester, should we figure out a way to make this easier? And they all say no.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
never had
yeah,
any of them say no.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
I they're the chips are down. They were
yeah.
hired to come in there and make tough decisions, and you got to make those tough decisions. And right, and I also, by the way, for what it's worth, and you can cut this out of the video if you don't want your students to see it.
That's okay.
But I always tell my students, like, you get a better grade from me when you make a mistake and you own up to it, and you know why and how you're going to do something different next
Different
time.
next time. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
That's way better
Yeah.
than saying, "Oh, this didn't work." Like, who cares? You sound like a complaining 2-year-old. Like, I don't care. like, hey, if this were the situation, you made a good, what you thought was a good decision, it didn't work out. Why didn't it work out? And then be loud and proud and understand it, understand the nuance, and then use that in your presentation. And if you start operating that way, people trust you in business. People will trust you when you own up to your, like, hey, we should have seen it, but we didn't. You know, that's the way you want to operate, not make
Yeah.
excuses and blame somebody.
Well, your teams
So,
are more, I don't know what to say it, but more mature in terms of wanting it not to be made easier because they can see that tough things is our little a better challenge. Because my teams are more like, well, no, if you made it easier, you'd make it easier on yellow too, and we don't we don't want that. It's like the difference between Aikido and Jiu-Jitsu. I always tell in Aikido, when you're hurt and you're twisted, you put a little red band there so that they don't hurt you more when you get twisted and hurt. My Jiu-Jitsu, my Brazilian guys say, "Are you kidding me? That's what we'd go for." Saw a red mark. That's where we try to hit them.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, yeah, but in what I did this semester, this last semester is I gave my students more points if they improve their cumulative retained earnings, which is the most
Ah,
holistic number on there.
oh,
So,
it is.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's hard.
that
It's hard.
includes
Yeah.
that includes everything. You got to manage your income statement, you got to manage your balance sheet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Actually, you can't just sell plants because in the 15-week game you can sell plants, you get mergers, you have all kinds of
Yes.
other things. You can't just create cash flow out of nowhere and say that you're doing a good job running this company. You actually have to generate revenue and bring it to the bottom line. And so that's what makes it particularly hard is that
Yeah.
they may be winning, but they're not improving their company's retained earnings,
Right. Right. It's so hard. I
which,
mean, they said they did better because it's less negative, and it's like, well, okay, I'll give you that, but still,
yeah,
you're still
that's right.
underwater.
You're still underwater. That's right. And you can only, the good news is, given the circumstance of your competition, there's only so much you can do, right?
Yes.
If, if,
Yeah.
if all, and that's
Yeah.
something that you
Yeah.
need to recognize as a
Yeah.
facilitator. If everybody else is giving their cars away, all of them, and the yellow team is still losing money, but they're winning, they probably did a heroic job getting to
Yeah.
that point because everyone
Yeah.
else is giving away the shop. And
Yes.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
we don't want to hold the fact that the other teams are not creating a conducive environment to profitability
Yeah. Yeah.
against all the teams.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
something we want to remind them, like you need to look at your competition and make sure everyone here should be making money, right? Everybody. If you're doing this strategically, you all realize you need each other as good, righteous competition, and you want to compete, and you want to compete for the most gross sales, but you're all profitable. Because if most of you are not profitable, it means your industry is going away.
Yeah.
The
Well, I
investors are going to divest from your company, and all of you are going to be out of job. No one
yeah.
wants a car anymore. If no one's profitable, no one wants a car.
Well, I mean, I'm coping with that in our doctoral program because there's a whole lot of the students that are extremely sort of left liberal, not, I wouldn't say socialist, but we're got a doctorate in business and they're sort of, some of them are anti-profit and anti-money in some ways, the 000 stuff and all that. And I'm all for the environment and that, but I think the light bulb went off as we were having one discussion and just some old guy brain thing. I said, I heard one time that something that's important to this, and that is all profit is a future cost. And if you think of profit as a future cost, you're not gouging, you're planning for a future and there's gonna be a lot of changes. And if you don't have anything behind the clock, you're not gonna exist anymore. So it's planning for the future financially by being sound and saying, let's set a little bit away and have a way to weather whatever storms come, because there's always going to be those ups and downs, they're
Well, yeah, and and this is, not nothing to do with this class, but a big picture thing. We're living in a time where debt financing companies have to give away their balance sheet because they can't make 12%. They can't beat
yeah.
inflation. They
Yes.
can't beat
Yes.
monetary inflation. And so
Yes.
going
Yes.
out, they're doing stock buybacks, they're
Yeah.
doing crazy merger deals that make no
Convertible debentures. Yeah. Yeah.
crazy stuff
Yeah.
because the macro environment that's way bigger than any company has
Sure.
created one where literally no company can sit around with cash on their balance sheet, they have to either give it back or, die a slow death or something. It's really crazy. It's really a challenging time,
Oh, it
I
is.
think, to be a CFO or to be operating in the wider world. Really interesting times.
Well, we're old enough to remember inflation, and it is, most of all those young folks haven't had to live with it at all. But I mean, I just told them the old business school, it's more dollars chasing fewer goods. Either you got supply issues or somebody's printing money in the basement, and so if you're going to have the inflation. Then what happens to the weighted average cost of capital? Everybody says, "I'm going to buy a bond. Why do I need to invest in your company? If I can get 18% back, what are you going to do?" It's like.
And no sophisticated investor needs the CEO of a car company, for example, to be investing the, the treasury of the company in a 5% bond. I mean,
Right,
give
right,
me the money
right.
back. I'll invest my own money. I'm
Yeah,
not paying. I'm paying
yeah,
you big money in the car business. I'm not paying you
yeah,
to invest the money at 5%. And there are very few businesses that have opportunities that yield more than 5 or 8%, given the
yeah, yeah,
competition, given the
yeah.
challenges, global challenges.
Oh yeah,
So we're in for a big shakeout, I think.
yeah,
It's come.
yeah. Do you see your teams borrowing money almost every period, or do they do a lot of borrowing on your teams?
uh, no, every once in a while I'll have a team that'll borrow consistently. Most of them don't don't most of them, the way the game is structured now, are not in a situation where they can borrow and deploy money
Ah,
at a higher rate than the cost of interest.
yes, yes,
Although I have had two teams that I can think of in the 30 or 40 teams that I've run through in the last couple of semesters,
sure.
actually had created by decision 5 or 6, because I go a few decisions longer, they had
Yeah.
created a flywheel where they could borrow,
Oh, yeah,
deploy
yeah.
profitably in one of their business units at a return higher than the cost of capital.
Interest. Ah,
In
very
which
cool.
case, their stock price goes through the roof because
Right,
they're
right.
now doing what everybody that invests in the company wants them to do, which is to make a lot of money, borrow other people's money. We're the equity, go borrow debt, deploy it so that we get the leverage benefit.
Ah, well, they put a little bit of negative saying, your leverage gets up to 85 to 100%. It's going to be 8% versus 4 or whatever. They have a little scale there, but our teams have consistently, I think I maybe gave it the wrong signal because I said, make sure you all borrow 2 grand. I don't want you running out of money, but I didn't mean every decision. So I
No,
said,
no,
just the first
no.
time. And so some of them did a couple and then said, well, we're going to pay it back. And I said, well, your leverage isn't that bad. You got a huge amount of revenues. You don't have a lot of profit, but look at your capex. Maybe you want to invest some of this in plants rather than paying the money back, depending on what's the return either way. Good. Do your own IRR and figure out which one is best. So,
That's it's interesting, and you think about it this way. Now, the mega people told me, tell your students to borrow max decision one.
sure,
So no
sure.
matter who they were, they could be running this through the CEO, the C-suite of a public corporation in Europe. It doesn't matter. They tell them all the same. Borrow $2,000 because you may need it. Okay. And so that's always out of the box what they suggest you to do. But if you're coming in to turn around, because this is clearly a turnaround situation, if you're coming in to turn around a company and in the year 2, year 3, you're giving money back, that means you're already tapped out. You're going to fail.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
nope, that
yeah.
doesn't make any sense for you to
No.
be, hey, you get to turn this company around in this highly competitive environment, and your solution as an executive team is to give people their money back. Like, no, you need to be finding what is the best way to deploy these resources we control now so that
Yes, yes.
by
Yeah,
decision 4 and 5, we're making money. So
yeah,
generally
yeah.
speaking, it doesn't make sense to pay off that money. I mean, and the teams that get way out of some teams that can't control their inventory end up with huge problems. They get government bailouts and their loans, their leverage goes through the roof. I mean, they're in deep trouble
Yeah, yeah.
and they may not get out. But for most,
None of the Emerald teams, as a interjection, have had cash flow problems. This has been a fantastic universe. We see always some teams that just don't do well with the cash, or even if they do well, they try to pay it back instead of building a flywheel. All three teams here, hats off, have done fantastically in Emerald of keeping their cash flows solid, and you should all take a bow for that in your final presentations because there were no government loans, which is very unusual. There's always at least one where somebody runs out of cash. You've done fantastically well, all three teams on this universe.
Competitive teams, it just doesn't make sense. I haven't seen a lot of reasons why you'd want to pay off a loan until maybe in your
Yeah,
last decision to
sure.
say, look, we've got an extra $4,000 here. Let's pay a little loan off. If we're in a situation where we have a positive retained earnings, we can
Retained earnings,
dividend,
bounce it up if we're close. Yeah, yeah,
play a
yeah.
little here and a little there and
Sure, sure.
see.
No one's in that situation here. We don't have positive retained earnings, which we usually don't in the 5 week, but or five decisions. But remember, there are some differences with this, many differences with this last one. And we're coming up here now to the most important part of the video. If you're only watching it, you're at 28 out of 38, 10 minutes before the end. And we saved to the end of this, which is why I'm repeating it here. These are very important things you've just heard for your final paper, okay? More so than even the decision, but you'll hear a trick here in a second. If you don't have the time, and we're all busy to watch this whole video, there's the important part. And now Paul's going to give us the kicker on how inventory is different for decision 5, which I didn't want you seeing or watching because it wasn't important and it could hurt you in previous decisions. But for decision 5, this is really important. Listen.
Because I encourage all my students to game the last decision.
That's what I was going to ask you. That was my final question is like, we're into decision 5 now. Give us some wisdom. That's interesting.
Game the last decision because you're all going to go out with a bang. Okay. You're all retiring. Every
Yep.
student going to retire in your company. And so what you want to do now in the real world, I tell them you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't leave whoever's taking over the company with an
With a
empty box.
mess. Right. Yeah.
So, but this is for fun. All the things you wanted to try that were afraid to, particularly if you're in third or fourth place, like, you know what?
Yeah.
Katie blew the door, baby.
You may
Try
get up to 2 or
great,
1. Yeah. That's
have
cool.
fun with it and see what happens
Yeah.
because it's just a game. And so
Awesome.
play game it a little bit, see what you can do, but I do tell everybody you do not want to have, now in your case, you can't sell a plant.
Right. Right.
In the longer version of this simulation, they can sell plants. And so what I say is you want to make your balance sheet as skinny as you can. So you don't want any inventory that you are not really sure you can sell
Yes.
because that will just end up dragging down your ratios. Okay. So you don't want to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
So,
really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I
so
think there's
that's
a couple teams that are in that situation that have bounced up and down. And I know one in particular that is really going to take some risk because they're breathing down the neck of yellow and no one's been able to touch them. And they're close enough, I think. So, but I won't give advice to one without everyone. So they'll see yellow will see what's coming, I'm sure. But
and realize, so like if I don't invest in depreciation for my plant, for example, that creates some headwinds because the employees find out about it, productivity goes down, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're in third or fourth place and you don't need to produce all the cars your plant can produce, who cares about your employees, right?
yeah, yeah.
Don't make
You
any
got to
cars.
do it. I know.
Don't make the cars. Let them complain. Don't fix the equipment. Don't invest in depreciation. Now that's one of those things in the real world I wouldn't tell people to do. Like
Sure.
you got to maintain your plant.
Sure, sure.
Game, and in the game, you don't want to take money that you could do something that will help one of your 6 winning metrics and deploy it in a way that will not help you. And so this is where it gets to be really strategic because they may
Ah,
see we're really close. We're third, they may be first, second, third, fourth, depending on the metric. But
yeah,
they'll look in, they'll say, we're really close to the yellow team or the blue team on this one metric.
sure.
What decision can we make that will help us flip that
Pushes
team
over that metric. Yeah, yeah,
just for that one metric? And so you
yeah.
have to numerator and denominator for each of the metrics, for each of the winning
Yep,
things,
yep.
and decide what to do. Now, if you've got a team that's winning on CO2 emissions, for example, and let's say you don't sell any cars. Well, they're probably going to go down on CO2 emissions because they're going to sell a bunch of cars and you're not. So
Yeah,
CO2 emissions will get better by virtue
Yes.
that you haven't sold any cars. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
So some of these things are a little bit counterintuitive, but if you understand the metrics,
Yeah.
that's what your decision should be driven by. At this point, the last decision, the last two decisions, how is our decision going to do these various things? Will it impact the 6 winning metrics? Because they want to be in the
Yes.
best position for each one of those 6 metrics. And everything they do to improve one metric will hurt them in another metric. So how close are they, and how do they want to deploy their?
That's great because you just got to keep reminding there's not going to be a decision 6, so don't plan for the future at this point. Yeah, exactly. You don't have to invest in a plan for 2 more decisions from now because, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, it'll
Very
slow
cool.
down, particularly if you don't need. If a team says, you know what, we're only going to sell 100 family cars, but we've got inventory and we've got the ability to make inventory plus capacity 140 cars, there's no reason you'd make those extra 40 cars.
Yes,
So what
yes,
you
yes.
do is you say, I'm not doing depreciation in my plant, capacity is going to go down.
Yep.
Some of the employees' productivity is going to slow down a little bit, but then you say, I'm going to make, instead of making full blown, however many cars you can make, only make 35 cars. They're going to be expensive cars, but make
Yeah.
sure you sell them.
Yes, yeah. Fire sale, expensive cars, but not a lot of them. That's great. I love it.
Here's one other trick. You can decide how you want to talk about this with your students.
Sure.
The game it doesn't categorize inventory based on where the sliders were when you made the car. Okay. And otherwise it'd be way too complicated.
Oh, yeah.
How many
Sure.
cars do you have left over from decision 3? And if every decision you're tweaking your sliders, you're making essentially different cars.
Oh, that's right.
Okay.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
what the game does is, as long as you make a car, all of your inventory inherits the last characteristics that you've
Of
set up.
those sliders. Oh, because they can't go back and mix them all. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
So it's not realistic. And I tell my
Yeah.
students, you made vinyl seats in your cars for 10 years and you made one car with leather
And now
seats.
they're
On
all
your car
leather.
is leather seats. And so take and just floorboard, firewall your CO2 number, and no matter what car you however many cars you, and only make one. If you only make one car, it'll be really expensive car, but you're only making one car. But that characteristic will inure to all of your
All
inventory.
the rest of the inventory. Oh, is that amazing? That is so cool.
So it's not realistic, but it's a game. It's if you want to game it now. The models you don't automatically roll out with 27 models the next year, so that one's not so
Sure.
much.
Sure.
But the metrics that have to do with, like, if you want to make your cars roomier, faster, more eco-friendly, and you're only going to make 1 or 2 cars, who cares? Like, just
Wow.
floorboard.
I
Firewall.
totally missed that because I was looking at cannibalization. I was saying, well, it doesn't really cross over. But I didn't think of backward integration of cannibalization of making something better. That's a fascinating. That is really
So
interesting.
if you've got a team with enough inventory that they don't need to make any more cars,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
in last or second to last place because they
Sure.
couldn't control their inventory, then maybe they want to make one car that's a 10 on every 10 on,
Yes.
just make one.
And then all of them will
All
be
their
that
inventory
characteristic.
suddenly becomes really sexy,
Oh my gosh.
and it gives them the chance. Now,
That is huge.
as long as you tell your whole class this, then
Oh
they
yeah,
can
no, everybody will
determine-
know. I never tell anything to one team or they'd kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so otherwise the game, it would be too complicated. You wouldn't know
Sure.
which car and
Oh yeah, it'd
Okay, now that is the absolute secret that we did not want to tell throughout the entire. Many of you have already figured it out in terms of why did this inventory suddenly move when we made that change. It wasn't that you made that inventory change of the new cars you made because it didn't just apply to that. It also applied to your existing inventory. That could bite you, it could help you, but with the 5th decision, there's absolutely there's no issue there, because when you make that final decision, it applies to all the inventory. Okay, we're going to wrap this up because that was really the main message. You can look at your white lines, etc. I will be posting some graphics on that on the Biz 485 site, so you'll have it. It's not for Decision 5 as much as we're required by our people that watch us as we teach this not to spoon feed too much by the last decision. They want to see maturity and do what you want to do and you have to do, but that should be a huge help for you. And I wish you well on the final decision, and for your white lines and those graphics you may need for your final paper, and by week 8, which there's no more sim in, you'll be talking about your future careers, etc., and then doing your final presentation. I'll have those graphics for you. But for this decision, it's very, very different for Decision 5, as you just heard, as you watch that and strategize yourself. I'll have more advice for all the teams in announcements before your final meeting next Sunday or Monday, depending on when you're watching this. And then you're into the final presentation and the ending of the class. So I've been appreciated working with you all, and hopefully that was helpful, because Decision 5 is very, very different with this knowledge and information, and it's easy for a last place team to jump back to first, depending on what the other teams do, and it's not as much about plant capacity. You can make all the characteristics for just one car that costs $20 billion, and so you don't sell it, but it also affects all those things in the rest of the other inventory. That's the secret and the cheat for Decision 5. Thank you.